Welcome back, and we're ready to present the next student CE presentation. And we have the pleasure to feature Roberto Acosta. Roberto is a pianist and composer from Miami. He earned his degree in jazz performance from Oberlin College and Conservatory. Roberto has performed at festival and venues including the Next Gen Jazz Festival, Kagoshima Art Festival, SF Jazz, and South Beach Jazz Festival. We welcome in his panel, as a committee member again, Professor Alan Mallet, and as an advisor, Alan Chase. Professor Alan Chase, please welcome Roberto Acosta.
Thank you all, thank you. Let me just get used to this microphone real quick. Okay. Thank you again for everyone for being here, my friends and my panelists. Today, my story and my project is called The Escape. It's based on a journey by a Cuban rafter rowing to America in search of freedom and the pursuit of their dreams. This rafter happens to be my father. In Cuba, he felt trapped, he felt that he couldn't aspire too much, and he felt that he was wasting away. In 1993, he made the decision to end his chapter of life in Cuba and sought to create a new start for himself, for his future children and grandchildren. The only obstacles were the Cuban government and 90 miles of open sea. Table of contents, how I'm going to be organizing my presentation. My purpose and motivation behind this. The history of Cuban exiles, a brief history. My father's story represented with text. An interview, music, and artwork by Luis Cruz Alceta. And lastly, my closing remarks. For my purpose and motivation, I identify as a Cuban American, not just because my parents were born in Cuba, but because since I was in my mother's womb, I was exposed to Cuban culture through her, and mainly my dad, as he is a musician, atracero. I only listened to traditional Cuban music. I listened to a lot of música trova, salsa, danzons, and so on until my teens when jazz, hip-hop, and rock were exposed to me, the American culture side of me. For this project, I wanted to combine both in a unique way and not just a traditional Latin jazz label. I wanted to explore my history, how I ended up being the first American born in my whole family. This is really important to me, as I pretty much still am on my mom's side, the only American-born Cuban. And lastly, I wanted to bring awareness to the great lengths that immigrants pursue to flee their native country. Not just Cubans, but Latinos in all. Latin America travel great distances and face many, sometimes life-threatening challenges to come to America. And not just America, but the whole world. Why Cubans fled? The history of the Cuban exodus is split into 4 waves, with all of them pertaining to political, economic, and the quality of life. Interestingly, each of these waves leans more on one of these reasons. First, we're going to start with the first wave, which is when Castro came to power in 1959. He immediately confiscated private property from the people and many of these wealthy Cuban property/business owners. The main influx of Cubans to the U.S. were upper-class Cubans, which makes sense since Castro appeared to the poor. Next, we have the second wave, which is lesser known. Throughout the 60s and the 70s, discontent grew in Cuba due to economic hardships alongside the disappearance of political freedoms, and now it was the turn of the middle class and the lower class to flee the U.S. An American program called Freedom Flights transported Cubans to Miami by plane twice a day, 5 times a week for almost a decade. About 300,000 refugees were brought to Miami. Third, we have the famous Mariel boat lift. In just about 6 months, 125 refugees, or as they're so-called Marielitos, were brought to the harbor of Mariel to Florida by boat. One of the main triggers of this exodus was a sharp downturn of the Cuban economy. By this point, the lower class and those living in the poverty line were leaving. Lastly, this brings us to the fourth wave. With the collapse of the Soviet Union, Cuba entered a period called Periodo Especial, the lowest point in quality of life, as the economy was in shambles. This was the hardest time for the people. Malnutrition was rampant, and many people fled in makeshift rafts. This was just a really quick overview on each wave, and I showed you guys this because I wanted to highlight the means of travel. At first, it was planes, ships, and now makeshift rafts. It kept getting progressively more dangerous. My father's story starts with the years of dissatisfaction and oppression from the government. Since he was young, he would dream of living in the U.S. The 90s was a tipping point for him, to embark on a voyage that could cost him his life, as it had for many other Cubans. As he finished the preparations of the journey with his fellow crewmates, it was time to say goodbye to his family, his friends, to the life he knew for the last 29 years. My first composition, Looking Onto the Other Side, is about dark moments in our life. We tend to get caught up on what's happening in the present and not the future. This song encompasses the present while seeking the future, being the other side, being hope, peace, in this case freedom. And the darkness was, for my father, was not knowing he was going to make the journey. You will hear a short audio of my dad's interview describing the moment he said goodbye to his parents before the song starts.
Me despedí de mis padres. Fue un momento duro. Entre lágrimas salí de mi casa. Pensé que no los volvería a ver jamás.
It is. It's the night of November 4th, 1993. After saying his goodbyes, my father and his crew of 11 took to shore. The raft they escaped on was made of plywood and fiberglass, constructed by a carpenter. Before placing the raft on the water, they made a final check of all their supplies: water, canned food, motion sickness medicine, and fruits, and waited out the Cuban Coast Guard to make their move. Past midnight, they jumped on the raft and paddled out. My father was in charge of steering the raft. It was just a plank of metal. The waves were rough. I quote, "You'd see a mountain of water high up and us at the bottom. Then we'd be at the top of the mountain, and all you could see was a terrible hole. It was brutal, terrorizing. The beginning of the voyage was difficult because of these waves, and half of the crew was throwing up because of motion sickness. They had to inject medicine for the dizziness, Gravenol. After a couple hours of rowing, the sea calmed down, and the crew agreed on starting the engine, assuming that they were far enough so the sound wouldn't bring attention towards them. This engine was taken from a Russian motorcycle and makeshift with chains to a propeller. As they started the engine, they quickly noticed how weak it was. The engine could not turn the propeller fast enough to propel the raft forward. They ended up tossing the engine overseas because it was dead weight. There was panic on board, and one of the crewmates were saying that they can't possibly row all the way to America and wanted to return back to Cuba. Thankfully, they were able to convince him that we needed to continue. Paddle ahead, continue forward until we can't. Going back would risk them getting caught and thrown in prison by the Cuban government. My next song, The Escape, is about their first hours at sea, moving forward without looking back. This song has a driving force to it, and I use elements of the rumba clave and the bass motive to represent the Cuban waters they were escaping from. Come sunrise, the next day, it was pretty much most of the same thing, rowing. It's pretty much just empty, vast, and quiet waters. The only new obstacle was sleep deprivation. By that evening, the whole crew hadn't slept for over 24 hours, and they still had an extra day to go. By nighttime, my father's exhaustion reached such a high point that he started hallucinating. He remembered seeing roads in all directions that were covered in trees on every side. To this day, he still doesn't really know what it meant. They kept pushing forward through the night. The final day, after spending the last 30 plus hours at sea, in the morning they were surrounded by birds, first sign of life since they left Cuba. The crew was destroyed physically and mentally. Everyone was extremely sleep deprived, and the rowers and my father had massive blisters from paddling and steering. Midday, the sky turned dark and the waves in the current were going in all directions. My father truly thought that this was going to be the end for him. He told God, "I am in your hands and you will decide my final day." Shortly after, the waves calmed down and dolphins appeared around the raft. The crew knew they were getting close. In the evening, they saw a fishing boat, a group of American fishers. They quickly did everything they could to grab their attention. Arrival is a song about them completing their journey. Compositionally, I tried expressing the emotions of having completed a dangerous task. This song features my father's words on being rescued over an Awakwa rhythm.
empezamos a hacer señales hasta que logramos llamar su atención. El bote se nos acercó, eran unos americanos que estaban de pesquería y llamaron al Coast Guard y nos rescataron. Estábamos a salvo y ya montado en una guagua por la carretera de Los Cayos. Yo me daba golpes en la cara y me decía, ¿será real? Estoy soñando. No podía, no creía que era real.
On the evening of November 6, 1993, my dad made it to America. This is him in the circle. Yeah. A treacherous 2-day journey across the Florida Straits to freedom. Their dreams and aspirations are about to begin. This is one story of tens of thousands of different stories. Lastly, not all these stories end the same. Many perish at sea. During my research, I came across conflicting numbers of the amount of raptors that perished at sea. The numbers range from 15,000 to 100,000. My final song is dedicated to the raptors that couldn't complete their journey. Their stories ended short, their dreams of freedom stolen away. This song is about death, dying without reaching your dreams. It is entitled Sinking While Lost. I hope this gave you some insight to the great lengths that immigrants pursue just for a better life. This is pretty much the end of my presentation. Thank you all for being here. Obviously, my thank yous to my parents and my family for being the most beautiful ray of sunshine in my life. To the BJA faculty, Ben Street, Adam Cruz, Joe Lavano, and of course, Marco and Danilo. And then Gerardo Maestro, Ricardo, Paul, Jesse for recording and really getting my emotions through with the music. And all my global peers, I love you all so much. Thank you all so much for the amazing year. Thank you all for listening to my story.
Yes, thank you. Bravo, Roberto. We're gonna now go to the comment and questions, and we're gonna start with committee member Alan Malek again.
Hey, man. Yeah, great job. I'm glad it came together the way it did. I remember first meeting you in Oberlin. And this is pertinent because I was there as a visiting composer. And then when you studied with me here, it was all about the compositions, our weekly talks. We didn't talk much about the piano. Clearly, you know how to play the piano. And I have to say that as anybody who's ever studied with me actually heard me say before, I don't give advice, I give opinions. And when somebody comes to me with this kind of clear identity, I'm very careful about the opinions that I give. And I am truly impressed with the melodic sense of your compositions. You really know how to write a melody, and your choice of instrumentation also, to me, really represents Cuba and the sound of Cuba in a way that I'm not going to explain because it's personal. But so your identity comes through, and I was wondering if you could tell a little more about. I don't want to give it away, but well, you talked at the end about all those that didn't make it, and so clearly, your presence here is because you are the son of somebody who did make it. Could have gone the other way. Obviously, you wouldn't be here. I wonder if you have a little more that you could say about this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm eternally grateful to obviously be alive. I mean, thankfully, because my dad left, I was able to be born in America, the first person in my family born here, and just to be able to attend Berklee, be able to go to school here. I'm going to be the first person in my family too to hopefully get a master's degree. So there's a lot of firsts, and there's a lot of firsts going on. But yeah, I'm just eternally grateful. And my dad, he's an interesting character. He's a really how do I say this? He just goes for things. That's the best way to put it. Yeah, I need to be like that more. If I'm going to be honest.
Well, I think he must be very proud of you. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Yeah. Professor Alan Chase.
Yeah, congratulations on completing this. There were some final touches just very recently, that I hadn't seen, and I think they're very good. The main thing I want to mention is from what you told me, this is the first time you've really composed this much music, right?
Yeah, but before I came here, I think I just wrote 2 songs before this, so you guys have heard I think I've written 6 total compositions. You guys heard more than half of it.
Right. So and I agree with Alain that this is really promising, and I'm very impressed with the quality of the compositions. They're excellent. They sound great. Excuse me. Seem to. And you write well for the instruments. You play them well. They make sense for your band. They're varied. They're not cliched. They're not the same. There's many, many things that are hard to achieve that you're doing as a composer. And I hope this is the beginning of dozens more, when the time, as they evolve over the years, that you feel really empowered to go forward with that because you have really a lot to offer as a composer, and you have a voice, and it serves your music really well. I feel like it seemed like it was a bit of a struggle, which is good, like you took it seriously and you worked at it, and it was not just easy to just toss these tunes out, right? You worked really hard at it.
Yeah, it was definitely a step-by-step process.
Yeah.
I would, I'd write like another section, and the line can tell you, like, I'd be like, man, does this work? And I would just have like half of it for like a week or two, just keep repeating it. Yeah, but actually, a line helped me. He just told me to just lay it all out, even if it's not final, it's fine, and that actually helped to speed up the process.
Yeah, you expressed some doubts to me at times, but you always came through with when the completed compositions. I'm like, yeah, this is great. There wasn't much problem with the final results were excellent. There's a couple of little typos I'd like to fix in there that we didn't see, but some of this is very, very new, just the final touches on it. But I thought what you had to say is very clear and very strong and very, well expressed and passionate. And it's congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you, Alan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Roberto, just to add, I appreciate so much this presentation. As you know, I lived in Miami 10 years. And I have many, many friends that, just like you, were first, second generation Cuban American, and many friends that actually were Cuban and had experience similar as your dad. But I noticed that they did not ever like to talk about it. I always felt like the kids were talking more about what they went through, that, my friends that were actually Cuban and came, And the way you narrated this musically, but also your narration it was like almost like a documentary, and it was so well done. So well done, the way, you constructed the story, and how, the music became this soundtrack of this incredible, experience, real human experience, which, like everybody pointed out, all of that, here you are, taking full advantage of every sacrifice your dad did. So it's very powerful, this tribute. I really feel it. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit more about your dad, because you mentioned he was a musician. He's a musician as well.
Yes, he's a tercero. He's pretty good in my opinion. He's played with Celia Cruz, Gloria Estefan, Willie Chirino, etc., etc. And my dad's history of fleeing Cuba, like, dates decades before this. And I remember him in my interview with him. He told me in 1980 during the Maria boat lift. I think my grandfather's, my dad's dad, I think had a cousin who was in Miami. I don't know if it was a third, second, or first cousin. I'm not really sure. And they sent him like a telegram saying that they were going to pick him up, but they never came. So that was like the first time. Like, my dad like sold all his clothes. Like, he really thought he was going to leave Cuba in 1980. I think he was like 13 or 14. And then the second time was he was in a band, and they got offered to tour in Europe, and the government didn't let my dad leave because they thought he'd be someone who would exile, like flee their country. And they were right, yeah. So they denied him exit of the country. And then the third time he tried leaving is the serious one. In 1991, he and a couple of people he met who weren't his close friends. These people on this boat, they were all from his town, Codorro, La Habana. But the other people, the first time he tried escaping on a raft in 91, they were all from all over, and apparently someone snitched on them leaving. And before my dad wasn't even in the water, the police got him, and my dad spent a year in prison for trying to flee Cuba. Yeah, he got released in 92. And he tried again in 93. Yeah.
Wow, powerful. And I wasn't aware of the last data that you said, how many boats made it. That totally was shocking to me. Anyway, congratulations. Very, very moving story, very moving music. Very good.
Thank you, Marcos.
Roberto, proud of you. You're living with a story, man. That you just made a book for yourself, and I want to encourage you to continue filling up the blanks. And wonderful presentation. I thought one of the most powerful parts of the presentation was when you were the escape, the way that you were speaking on top of that was very powerful. I would even listen back to what I just heard and transcribe that and put a melody to it because it was amazing. Did you write all of those words that you were saying? Did you write? Is that your writing?
What do you mean?
The script?
The script? Yeah, I wrote that.
It's fantastic, man.
Oh, really?
It's fantastic. It's really good. I'm telling you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So go back to that. Play that.
Mm.
There's a lot in it, and congratulations, and don't forget this. Just keep. You can go forever with this topic. There's so many layers of emotions. Every day of your life, you get up. Just go again. Use this as a practice. How did that? What chord? What key? What can I do with that ending? You see that repeating note you were doing with the B on top? Like, what else can I do? This could be forever, man. Congratulations. All the best.
Thank you, Danilo.
Bravo, Roberto. Okay, we have the last presentation, 15 minutes for the morning, and then we'll take a break for lunch.